Hello there, my name is Josh Fury, Joost Noyelle, and a very important band for me to get back into metal that shook me by the nuts was my favorite band right now, Mastodon. I am active in bands since I was 15 years old. I've been bitten by the metal, how do you say it, microbe since my early teenager years. So yes, well, I started out in punk and hardcore first. Then I blended in a lot of metal because I was listening to bands like Slayer, of course. I learned to play guitar to Slayer, and this one's also very important for me. Prong, Slayer and Prong, those two bands kind of like formed my guitar playing. And yeah, well, I am not talking about my career right now. So I started out in bands like Congress and Liar. Those were the most important bands I was back in the 90s, in the 8000 era of metal hardcore here in the western of Flanders, you know. And then later I was more influenced by death metal bands like Death. And of course, one of the biggest names, Carcass. Those were major influences later when I played metal. Then I kind of like started playing. I lost my interest in real metal, you know. Late 90s, early 2000s, I discovered stoner, like Carcass, Kings of the Stone Age, but also stoner metal bands like High on Fire and the likes. And a very important band for me to get back into metal that shook me by the nuts was my favorite band right now, Mastodon. They blend the best riffs with the best vocal lines. They have, yeah, they were very inspirational. They they reinvented metal for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, like when I grew up, everybody was listening to hard rock and heavy metal. Then Metallica and Slayer changed it. They threw in a lot of speed, and they called it thrash metal. And the thrash metal evolved eventually into death metal and black metal. And early 2000s, you had this, how do you call it, tiredness of metal. And I started listening to metal again to bands like Mastodon. So I discovered them with the first two records. They were really rough monsters. But I also really like the later albums, especially Crack the Sky, which is my favorite album by them.
Okay.
And I really like all of their latest efforts as well. So they still are growing as a band and as songwriters, and they are very inspirational, and they are a very big band for me.
So you mentioned you discovered the band with their first two albums. That was what, Remission and Leviathan.
Yes.
I think Leviathan is probably when they broke through, you know, it to a bigger audience with some hits as well. How did you discover Mastodon? Like, was somebody just telling you, like, hey, listen to this band, or how did you discover them?
Yeah, it was really like that. I had an iPod back then, and he was like, "You should listen to this band. It's Mastodon." I have the two first records on my MP3 player, so I updated my iPod and I started listening to it. It was like very fresh, very at the time, because they combined the sludgy and the heavy and the doomy riffs with very progressive and jazzy stuff. You know, like it's a very a fresh and unique approach. When I listened to Mastodon, I also discovered prog bands like Yes and Rush and King Crimson and stuff like that. And also the Melvins and Neurosis. There's a whole new kind of bands when you listen to a band like Mastodon, because you know they are influenced by them. And then you start listening to their influences as well. So yeah, they were very important and still are. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Mastodon have fans of all ages. You know, go to their show, you see very young people, very old people. You already, you know, shared that, you know, we obviously know you from, like, you, for us, the fans, you came on the scene with the H8000 scene, you know, the Belgian hardcore scene from Western Flanders with Congress and Liar and so many other great bands. Although there is maybe a bit of a hardcore attitude to Mastodon, it is definitely very different than hardcore music. Is Mastodon for you an acquired taste? Is it something that you can appreciate more a little bit later in life? Do you think if Mastodon came around in the late 80s, early 90s, when you were, you know, starting to play in these bands, would you've been attracted to that music as well?
Yeah, for the riffing, yes, of course, but maybe not that much for the vocals, because they are very commercial now. They are very poppy at times, and the first 3 albums were very riff-based. They had like it's very technical stuff. It's like, you know, look what I can do. They had all their players, all their musicians were they are incredible players. You know, they have the best guitar players. Every band member has his unique voice and has his. It's kind of like the Queen from the metal, you know. They all have a different, distinguished voice, and they blend in perfectly together. So yeah, it's quite it's a unique band.
There's a clear influence on King Hiss with Mastodon. Is there a particular? Let's go to your first song that you want to highlight. Is there a particular song that you would say influenced the King Hiss sound?
Yeah, well, I think we all listened a lot to Crack the Sky back in the days. We were very blown away by each vocal line, because King Hiss is very important. The voice of King Hiss from Jan is very important. It's a major part of King Hiss. So he always, you gotta listen to this new song by Mastodon. They top themselves. It's like they overdone it with the vocal lines. Like all worst vocal lines, you know, are, how do you call it? No, their worst vocal lines are our best, are their best vocal lines. You know.
Yeah.
It's like yeah. Well, it's very inspirational. I think we all were fans from The Hunter as well, because The Hunter came out in 2011, I think, the year King Hiss started rehearsing. So then we broke down one of the songs on the album. I think it was Black Tongue or Curl of the Burl, because they have this pretty particular songwriting modus. And then we try to write songs like this, but it's quite impossible.
And so you already mentioned a few songs from different albums. If you have to pick your first song, which one would that be?
My first song is Oblivion from Crack the Sky. It grabs you by the balls the first time you hear those notes. The hair in the back of your neck stands straight, you know. And it's also Crack the Sky was a very symbolic and a very, how do you call it, personal album to the band, because as you know, their guitar player got beaten down. He was in a coma, and the first thing that came out of his fingers were the starting notes from Oblivion. So it's a very personal approach. All their albums, the first 4 albums were concept albums, which we also did with King Hiss on Mastersaurus. We wanted to do the same. So Oblivion has it all. It has the killer riffs, it has the hooks, it has an epic acoustic part, and it has amazing blistering solos. So you can't top it. You can't top. But they had amazing songs on the previous albums as well. But Oblivion is like the masterpiece to me.
It's a family unit, and it's also pretty impressive to see how stable their lineup has been, given all of the problems that individual members have had over the years. An inspiration in that way as well, not just the music, but what a band can do as a team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. Yeah, they had their issues with disease and cancer and their addictions, and yeah, and they stuck together and they wrote the best album because they were in dark times. Yeah. You know, it was a main inspiration for their albums and for their songwriting. And I think it's for every musician, it's very important to go through troubles, to go through shitty times, to write good music. On a personal level, it's the same. I wrote the best albums, the best music when I was down or when I was moody. So
yeah,
it's yeah, that's true.
If I were to ask you what your second song would be, are we staying in the same era, the same album, or are we going something completely different?
No, we are going to the first album from Remission. The Mother Puncher is my second favorite song.
Awesome.
It's sludgy. It's mean. It has this caveman. Dun, 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 and it has everything, you know. Yeah, it's amazing. I played it on my socials last weekend, and people they enjoy it a lot because it's a very important album for most people, because most of the people discovered Mastodon through the first albums. For me, in the hardcore and metal community, then when you talk to older people, they who are more into prog, they discovered the Hunter, Crack the Sky, or Once Around the Sun. They prefer those albums more than the first riff-based, harder, aggressiver albums. You know, more albums, of course, yeah. So that's my second choice, and my third choice would be totally different. The Sparrow from the Hunter.
Okay.
The final acoustic song. It's very emotional, very simple lyric, and yeah, it was a dark time for me as well when I discovered the song and the album. It's a very personal song. My girlfriend still had it on her cell phone as a ringtone, and we were like through emotional troubles with our exes and with our, you know, when you're in a divorce. We were both on a divorce, and we missed our kids, and that song was really inspirational and emotional, and yeah, it's my number 3 Mastodon song. Yeah.
And the Sparrow, it's the closing song of the Hunter. Mastodon always, you know, their album can already have been crazy, but then they always seem to save this very special something for the very last song. Every album closes with
mostly
something
it's acoustic
unique
songs, but unique. Yeah. Mostly it's an acoustic epic song, and then they come back with like The Lost Baron. That's in 4 parts. It has jazz, it has prog, it has speed metal. It's everything. It's incredible. Yeah, they always close with they go over the top in their last
Exactly.
song.
Yeah. I think a great example of that also is like Jaguar God on Emperor of Sand, which I thought was really cool too. Awesome. Now, listening to Mastodon is one thing. Seeing them live is crazy. You shared like, hey, you know, a really important band for me as well was Slayer. I remember, I think the first time I saw Mastodon was probably when they opened up for Slayer, and I think it was together with Trivium and Amon Amarth or something like that in like the early 2000s, when it was my first introduction to this new band, Mastodon. Mastodon is a band that you also have to see live to see the power. Have you seen them live?
I've seen them like more than 10 times now, and the first time was the worst time. I've seen them on Werchter. First time, Werchter, I think it was 2000. Well, it was for the promotional tour for Crack the Sky. They started at 15 o'clock on Sunday noon in the blistering sun, and the sound was horrible. Yeah. You couldn't hear Brent's voice, or you couldn't hear the solos. It was horrible. They were on tour with the Mars Volta. The Mars Volta were incredible. They were good friends. They inspired each other a lot, from what I've heard. But I've seen them later for once more around the sun, and then I got guitar lessons from Bill Kelliher. You could send an email, hey, I want to follow 1 hour guitar lesson, and it was very inspirational and I learned a lot, you know. It was very technical, and what his specialty is, he can, it's like soloing through riffing, you know?
Yeah.
He doesn't do any solos. Bill doesn't play any solos. It's always Brent Hinds who does the solos. But Bill is very serious, and he is very driven, and he told me like, hey, we play like 1 hour and a half. That's all we have to play each day, so what can I do with the rest of my time? I used to do drinking, I used to do drugs. What can I do now to make a better world? And it was beautiful. You can teach guitar lessons to kids. The best solution for boredom on tour. It really is. Yeah, that was, and the show was very good as well. And then I've seen them a lot of other times with, I think, with Trailer Tuck and Red Fang and Packages, you know. Yeah, I've seen them like more than 10 times. So the last time I saw them was with the big laser show and the big screening in the back. It was very storytelling and epic, you know. It was an experience. It was an experience, a total experience.
Josh, it's clear how much your passion exists for Mastodon and music in general. And you know, to wrap us up, we obviously know that they've inspired you and continue to inspire you, and sounds like really rekindled a passion for heavy music in the last 20 years, which is pretty cool. And you are very active. You've got a couple of bands. Everybody watching this, what do they need to know? What's going on in your world?
With King Hiss, we are wrapping up our career as a band. So we quit. We play 2 more shows, June 1st and 23rd of June, Gransrock, Menen. So it's gonna be emotional. It's gonna be, yeah, an end of an era. But that doesn't mean I quit playing guitar because I started a COVID project called Dudsekop. It's kind of like black metal, but it's clean sung in West Flemish, in my own Ypres dialect. So we are writing songs for a second album, and yeah, we'll see what the future brings. I'm still active. I have side projects. I have an acoustic project, so we'll see what happens.
Well, it'll be sad to see King Hiss go after a decade of really cool music, but super excited to learn about this the new album that you're working on, and we'll keep our eyes open for music being released so that we can enjoy with you. Josh, thank you so much for sharing your passion with Mastodon and sharing your personal story.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.